A random woman on the subway decided my husband was flirting with her. We got into a crowded London Underground carriage. I sat down, while my husband stayed by the doors. He was looking at me and smiling, trying to catch my attention. Between us, a little game started. He was making faces to make me laugh. And then, suddenly, in the window opposite, I noticed a woman sitting next to me also smiling, and every time he turned around, she looked in his direction. Her smile was getting wider and wider. I thought, oh no, she's about to stand up, go to him and ask him out. I began to demonstrate in every possible way that he was mine. I unlocked my phone where his face was on the wallpaper, began scrolling through our photos together, deliberately tilting the screen so she could see. But she kept smiling, sometimes glancing down at her lap, sometimes back at my husband. I tried texting him, but of course, there was no signal underground. When our stop came and he walked towards me, I saw in the reflection how her face lit up with excitement. She even slightly lifted herself from the seat. But when she realized he was coming to me and not to her, her face instantly turned embarrassed and awkward. I stood up and kissed him, thinking that would make everything clear. But judging by her expression as we left, clarity was the last thing she wanted. I told my husband about it. According to him, he hadn't noticed a thing and said, "That woman has only herself to blame. I was clearly looking at you." And at that moment I realized, if my usually grumpy husband were just a little more friendly, he would have far more women chasing him. Addition, the psychology of smiles. Interestingly, psychologists have studied similar public transport moments. In 2016, researchers at University College London showed people short videos of subway passengers either smiling or looking away. Most participants automatically assumed that the smile was directed at them. This is known as the illusory target effect. Our brain loves to think attention is meant for us. So maybe that woman next to me genuinely believed my husband was smiling at her. And our minds are quick to spin entire romantic stories from 2 seconds of eye contact. My boss got me a raise just because I refused to use ChatGPT. I was drafting a speech for our CEO, who was scheduled to present at a major media event. Our company is gradually introducing policies on new technologies like AI, and I noticed that many in my department were using ChatGPT to draft their work texts. The results were predictably bland, a flood of cliches in every paragraph. Everything sounded like a TED Talk template. That day, my manager stood beside me and noticed that I wasn't using ChatGPT, even though it was officially allowed. When I finished my first draft of the speech, he read it, said he loved it, and praised me for refusing to use AI. He asked why, and I answered that I took pride in my work and paid attention to every detail. Then he asked me to also draft a press release. I wrote it on the spot in 15 minutes, and he liked that too. He promised he'd make sure upper management appreciated my effort and quality. And he really did. After long negotiations with leadership, he got me a 10% raise. I adore him. I still can't believe he convinced them to give me that, simply because I refused to use ChatGPT. It sounds insane, but I'm happy. Fun fact, AI fatigue. Many Western companies are already facing a phenomenon called AI fatigue, weariness from formulaic, template-like texts generated by AI. For example, in 2023, The Guardian ran an experiment, publishing a ChatGPT-written column. Editors admitted it was smooth and correct, but completely devoid of personality. So it's no wonder your manager felt the difference. Where a human adds quirks, emotion, and little details, AI still stumbles. A colleague at work lied about his height, and we decided to test it. I'm 33, and last Friday I was chatting with 4 coworkers. One of them, let's call him Steve, casually said he was 190 centimeters tall and weighed about 120 kilograms. Nobody doubted him, and I didn't have any reason to. For context, I'm about 196 centimeters tall, and I've long noticed that once someone's above 178 centimeters, I can't easily judge their height by eye. Later that day, I retold the conversation to another coworker, Jim, and he said, "No way. I'm 185, and I looked down at him." Then our friend Andy walked in. Andy is definitely 190 centimeters. I stood him next to Jim. It matched. We laughed about Steve's exaggeration, and I even stuck a post-it note on my monitor that read, "Height check Monday," so I wouldn't forget to measure. Monday morning, Jim and I stood beside Steve, just chatting. And sure enough, Steve was clearly shorter than Jim. He had claimed to be 190 centimeters, but he wasn't even 185. Height check failed. Addition: why men lie about height. On Tinder and other dating apps, surveys show that over 70% of men exaggerate their height, usually by 2 to 5 centimeters. This is due to the social desirability effect, a subconscious need to seem taller, stronger, higher status. Funny enough, even Napoleon was misjudged this way. Records show he was 169 centimeters, above average for his time, but the British exaggerated the short general stereotype due to confusion between French and English inches. For a whole year, my hens were laying eggs in the neighbor's yard, and they never told me. To be fair, I suspected it. At some point, 2 of my hens seemed to stop laying for no reason. I searched my yard and didn't find a single egg. I thought maybe the dog was eating them, or maybe the hen somehow managed to hop over into the neighbor's yard, even though the fence looked secure. It didn't bother me much, since I never treated my hens as production layers. They were just my pets. But the other day, I saw one of the missing hens squeeze through a tiny gap in the fence into the neighbor's yard. Then she came back loudly clucking, like, "I laid some eggs over there." Uh-huh. So that's where they'd been disappearing all along. Honestly, I almost felt bad about closing the gap. The neighbors had been getting free fresh eggs 2 a day for a year. And in this economy? I still laugh about it. My neighbors were enjoying my eggs all along, and they never said a word. Why would they? They probably thought, "She'll figure it out eventually." I'm grateful they never complained about hens wandering around. And I suppose they're grateful they didn't have to buy eggs for a year. Time to patch the fence. Poor neighbors. Hope they don't go bankrupt now. Update. Yep, it was that exact hole. One of the hens, realizing she couldn't squeeze through anymore, got offended and tried to lay an egg on my couch in protest. Update 2. I was hanging laundry outside and heard my neighbor walking around his yard. He tapped on a few spots of the fence, saw the patched-up gap, muttered, "Damn," and walked back. So yeah, he knew. Extra. Silent neighbor contracts. There's actually a term for this in rural sociology: incidental neighbor benefit. In farming villages, it's common for one household's animals or crops to spill over into another's life, like free shade, milk, or eggs. People rarely complain. Instead, it becomes a silent contract. No fuss, mutual benefit. Your neighbors ate free eggs, didn't nag you about your hens. That's the perfect example of an unspoken win-win. I just witnessed someone being called an idiot in the softest and yet the most brutal way possible. I was sitting in a cafe waiting for a friend when I overheard a group of foreigners nearby. One was British, the other two were Europeans, probably French, not sure. They were arguing about immigration in Europe. To be honest, the Brit was thick as a brick. He thought Pakistan was an Arab country and didn't know what the Ottoman Empire was. On top of that, his statements made absolutely no sense. I was sitting at the next table just stunned. The French couple were surprisingly patient. They spoke to him like he was a child, explaining basic things he clearly had no clue about. But then he started repeating one word, Muslim, instead of Islam. Not once, but over and over. So it was clear this wasn't just a slip of the tongue. At some point the French guy snapped and said, "Muslim is called Islam, not Muslim. Did you really think it's called Muslim?" You see that word in the news and social media constantly. How could you get that wrong? He stared at the Brit, not with anger, but with sheer bewilderment. Then he added, "This is a phenomenal level of ignorance. I've never met anyone so uneducated." And then he leaned closer and said, "Tell me about your life." Ha ha ha. Imagine blurting out something so dumb that the guy doesn't even get angry. He just studies you like a scientific phenomenon. The Brit began to stammer and mumble nonsense. I nearly burst out laughing. Addition: soft insults in different cultures. In linguistics, there's a term, face-threatening act. Different cultures avoid direct insults by using irony or questions. In France, they might say, "You seriously believe that?" And that's enough to make you feel like a fool. In Japan, silence and turning away can be even harsher than words. The phrase, "Tell me about your life," is perfect here. It sounds almost kind, but it completely destroys your position. As a child, I once came home in tears because classmates had bullied me. Dad asked what happened. I told him they called me Fatty Boom Boom. Dad cut me off sharply and asked, "Are you a frog or a lion?" It didn't seem like a silly question. I was a smart kid. I confidently answered, "Of course a lion." Dad nodded and continued, "And do you think a lion cares what frogs croak?" I thought for a moment and said uncertainly, "Probably not, though their croaking is annoying." Dad patted my head and said, "Good boy. Yes, it's annoying, but the lion doesn't care." Since that day, and for over 20 years now, whenever someone tries to insult me, I think, stupid frog. Addition: frogs and lions. This echoes Viktor Frankl's idea. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Dad gave his son a brilliant metaphor. Instead of reacting to frogs, think like a lion. Fun fact about the deaf. My brother is legally deaf. He has a hearing aid so he catches some sounds, but mostly he uses sign language. Once we were watching a politician's speech, and there was an interpreter in the corner of the screen. I said to my brother, "Wouldn't it be great if YouTube and TV shows invested in sign interpreters? It would make content more accessible. What do you think?" I thought I was so clever. He took a sip of beer, looked at me, and said just one word that killed me. Subtitles. So yeah, today I learned most deaf people can read. LOL. What an idiot I am. Addition: deaf gain. There are over 70 million people worldwide who use sign language. Most also read well. In the U.S., there's even a concept called deaf gain, deaf people often develop sharper visual attention and memory. So your brother's dry subtitles was both a joke and a truth bomb. I just learned that in my sleep I pet the cat. One night my boyfriend and I were joking about spooky 3 a.m. horror YouTube stories. He suddenly said, "When I wake up at 3 a.m., I either see you sleeping or petting the cat." I thought he was joking, but he swore it had happened 6 or 7 times. He said the movements looked odd, clumsy. He assumed I was half asleep but awake. And since the cat loved it, he didn't think much of it. But I truly don't remember a single time. So apparently, I really do pet the cat in my sleep. The cat, of course, doesn't complain. On the contrary, she's thrilled. Fact: parasomnias. Such sleep behaviors are called parasomnias. It's not just sleepwalking, but also sleep gestures or even talking. There are documented cases of people painting or playing piano in their sleep. Your cat petting story fits the phenomenon perfectly. I have no words about what I just learned about my friend Paul. Paul has always had odd compulsions, almost ADHD-like. Most of them revolve around pushing things. If he sees a bottle of water, he has to knock it over. If he sees a lawn chair, he has to push it. If he sees a kid on a swing, he feels the urge to give it a push, even if he doesn't know the kid. He says he can't help it. He just loves pushing things. Honestly, if he were violent, he'd probably shove people off escalators. But Paul is harmless. He just pushes swings. Last night we were having dinner at his place. On a console table, I noticed some sort of tower made out of paper cups. Cool decoration, Paul. But no, it wasn't decoration. You can guess why he built it. He stacks a tower of cups, and the next day he knocks it down. Then rebuilds. Over and over. Addition: the Zeigarnik effect. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Unfinished tasks stick in your brain. People with obsessive impulses often create little rituals to complete the loop. For Paul, the cup tower is his safe ritual. I once made an elderly couple cry. Years ago, I worked for a cleaning company. One day our 4-person crew had a big job, cleaning a house after a move. It was a long, exhausting day. We cleaned 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a greasy kitchen with countless cupboards, and a large living room, plus hallways, closets, and high-ceiling fans. We vacuumed and scrubbed everything. At the end, a colleague said she couldn't get one freezer shelf out, so she left it. I didn't want to leave unfinished work, so I tried. After some effort, I got it out. I cleaned crumbs and a chunk of ice. Something fell out. It was a diamond wedding ring. The homeowners, a couple in their 70s, came to inspect. They were selling the place. I told them what I found. They stared in shock, and the woman teared up. When I handed her the ring, she said, "I lost this 10 years ago. I thought I'd never see it again." They were so touched, thanking me, almost crying. For the end of such a hard day, it was incredibly heartwarming. I was glad to give them back something so precious. Addition: jewelry in the freezer. It sounds odd, but many people really do hide valuables in freezers. In the 1990s, even the FBI suggested stashing items where burglars wouldn't think to look. So the woman might have hidden her ring in ice and simply forgotten. My boyfriend accidentally Pavlov trained his 20-year-old cat. Our cat, Tiger, is ancient. We recently switched him to Hill's prescription diet for his bones, but the other cats kept chasing him away from the food. In summer, Tiger likes hanging out in the basement where it's cool. So my boyfriend started bringing food down there. He closed the laundry room door and opened the can quietly so the other cats wouldn't hear. A few days ago, I went in to get laundry, and Tiger ran to his bowl, looking at me with hope. Today I finally realized, whenever I enter the laundry room, Tiger thinks it's feeding time. Guess I'll have to feed the cat now. Fact: conditioned reflexes. Ivan Pavlov showed dogs drool at the sound of a bell if it had been paired with food. Cats too have excellent memory. They can keep sound, food associations for up to 16 hours, sometimes days. So Tiger became conditioned by the sound of the laundry room door. Every few months, I dream of porridge. To be clear, I'm not a fan of porridge. It's fine, but at the bottom of my breakfast list. Yet every few months I dream of it. In the dream, I eat the most divine porridge ever, the nectar of oats, a bowl of bliss. When I wake, I crave porridge with every cell. For a week I binge. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. Bags of oats. Dozens of toppings. Oat milk by the liter. Damn my lactose intolerance. Then, after a week, it ends. I can't look at oats anymore. But I never throw them away, because I know the dream will return. It always does. My relationship with porridge is pure love-hate. Extra food dreams. Neuroscientists say food dreams often signal nutrient gaps. Dreaming of porridge might mean your body craves fiber or complex carbs. A 2021 Japanese study found that people who dreamed of rice or porridge tended to eat fewer carbs during the day. I once allowed a man to smash a can against the wall in the middle of my workday. Back then, I was a receptionist in a small clinic. My desk was positioned across from the lab where patients gave blood. One afternoon, a man came in with his young son for a blood test. The kid was maybe 6, clinging nervously to his father's hand. You could tell he was terrified. The nurse gently guided him into the chair. She prepared the needle, but the boy's eyes grew wide, and he started shaking his head violently. His breathing quickened. His dad knelt beside him, trying to comfort him, whispering something. Finally, the father stood up, walked over to my desk, and asked in a quiet voice, "Could I have an empty can from the recycling bin?" I was confused but handed one over. He returned to the boy, held the can in his palm, and said, "Do you know how strong you are? If you're brave enough to smash this, then you're brave enough for the test." The kid hesitated, then, bam! He slammed the can against the wall. It flattened. The boy's eyes lit up, he laughed, and suddenly the needle didn't seem so scary anymore. The nurse quickly did the blood draw while he was still proud of himself. The boy grinned the whole way out, showing me the crushed can like it was a medal. Addition: the psychology of empowerment. This father unknowingly used a powerful anchoring technique. By giving his son a concrete act of courage, he reframed the blood test as something he could conquer. Child psychologists often recommend similar rituals. Let the child squeeze a stress ball, blow bubbles, or even shout, "I'm brave!" before a procedure. It gives them agency. My aunt once taught me a hilarious yet wise saying, "You never really know a man until you divorce him." She explained, "You can live together for years and think you know him. But the moment lawyers and money enter, that's when you see his true colors." She herself had divorced twice. The first husband was calm, and even during the breakup, he stayed gentlemanly. They split fairly. The second one? He tried to hide assets, lied about income, and suddenly forgot about the kids' expenses. She told me, laughing bitterly. Marriage is about masks. Divorce is when masks fall. Addition, divorce studies. Sociologists confirm this. In fact, studies from the American Sociological Association show that about 70% of divorces are initiated by women, often because their partners reveal traits during crises, selfishness, irresponsibility, that were hidden before. One time, my friend ordered a beer at a bar. When the waiter asked, "Do you want a glass?" my friend said, "Yes, please." The waiter looked at him, puzzled, and replied, "The can is the glass." We both sat in silence for a moment. Then my friend whispered to me, "I think I've been defeated today." Addition, everyday absurdities. This tiny interaction reflects how our brain loves to fault categories. We automatically separate container from content. That's why my friends, "Yes, please," sounded logical, until reality crashed in. It's the same brain glitch behind the classic, "Do you want your burger with a bun?" A small boy once asked his grandpa, "Grandpa, can you croak like a frog?" The old man chuckled. "Of course I can. But why would you want that?" The boy replied, "Because Dad said, when Grandpa croaks, we'll finally go to Disneyland." Addition, innocent cruelty of children. Kids often repeat adult phrases without understanding. To them, croak is just a funny word. But behind their innocence, truth slips out. This is why psychologists sometimes use children's spontaneous speech to uncover family dynamics. They repeat what they overhear. A few years ago, my mom sat with her friend and showed her a selfie from her phone. She wanted advice on whether to post it. Her friend said, "You look so young in this photo, but so tired in the eyes." Mom laughed and said, "Well, that's exactly what 45 feels like." I'll never forget that line. It was so true and bittersweet. Addition, the eyes never lie. Dermatologists say the skin around the eyes is the first to show fatigue and age, often before wrinkles elsewhere. That's why eye contact feels so revealing. We intuitively read years of exhaustion or joy in a glance. Once, my husband teased me about how I can't eat spicy food. He said, "You can't handle spice at all. You cry after one chili flake." I pouted and asked, "Well, could you handle childbirth?" Silence. He laughed nervously, muttered something, and left the kitchen. He never teased me about spice again. Addition, humor as defense. This is classic reframing humor, taking a jab and flipping it. By comparing chili flakes to childbirth, you shifted the scale so drastically that the argument collapsed. It's why humor is such a strong social defense. It disarms without aggression. One evening, I asked my wife if she still loved me. She smirked and replied, "Of course I love you. I even tolerate your snoring." The scary part? I don't snore. Addition, seeds of doubt. This kind of joke hides a sharp edge. The fear of being replaced or compared is one of the oldest in relationships. Even playful comments can spark suspicion. Psychologists call this relational uncertainty, tiny cracks that can grow if left unspoken.